when we are typing code, it is case sensitive and spelling matters, but it is not white space sensitive. So we can put in extra line spaces, we can put in extra spaces when we're typing, but we can't put in extra letters, and we have to be conscious of our capitalization as we work. So every program that we create is going to have two functions or encapsulated sets of instructions that we work with. The first is going to be our setup. The next is going to be draw. Setup is where we initiate all of our parts of our program, and then draw is where we execute them, and draw will then try and run approximately 60 frames per second or 60 loops per second. It will try and do that depending on what we do. We're going to build programs that will creep our frame rate down closer to maybe like 1, 2, 3, or 4, because we'll use kind of non-optimized code with lots of objects, and we'll kind of make the computer scream at us. But first we start out and we say setup, and it's exactly as it looks, void setup, and then we put 2 parentheses, then I put in a curly brace, and I will hit return twice on the keyboard. I'll put in a closing curly brace. So every time we have a parenthesis, a curly brace, a square bracket, it needs to have a mate or a partner. We can't just put one, otherwise if we go there, and we can see it's already giving us the error message down there. It says syntax error, it's missing that. So let's go and put that back in. And every time I get a closing curly brace after I put it in, I will hit 2 slashes, because this allows me to put in a comment, and I'm going to type end setup. The reason we do that is as we add in our curly braces, if we just put in the opening one, put a bunch of code in the middle, and then go, oh yeah, I have to remember to do the closing curly brace later, it's really easy to forget it. And by putting a comment at the end of every closing curly brace, we know what its partner is, so that if I click on this curly brace, we can see how it highlights the first one. So we have the closing one highlighting the opening one. Now I'll hit return, and we could add in lots of spaces if we want, but I'll just go to right here, and then we say void draw. This is our function that is going to run 60 times a second, and then I will put end draw. And by starting this out, this is now the core template that we need for every program. And void, the reason we say void is functions want to know, are they supposed to return a value? So we can have functions that would say be a math function that would return a number. We could have it be a letter or a language function that would return a word or a string or multiple words. Or it could return an object, so we could be looking for something, or it could return a value of, say, true or false. So every time we create a function, in these function, we can see how it's dark blue here, or bolded blue. We always preface it by what is that function going to give back, and the word void means nothing. Setup doesn't return anything, it just does, and draw makes something happen 60 times per second. So first what we're going to do is I'm going to set the size of my sketch, and when I set the size, now you have to get used to where you see red when you start typing like this. That's okay, because it's waiting for you to complete it. It's waiting for me to put in that closing curly, and then we punctuate a line of code where we put in a semicolon at the end, and now I can see get an error message that says size is expecting 2 parameters, 2 integers. That integers are whole numbers, and those numbers it's looking for are going to be the width of my sketch and the height of my sketch. So I'm going to just make this small so it's easy to fit on screen, and I'll just say something like 400, and I could put a space here if I want, or not put a space between those. And now I've set the size of my sketch. Now if I were to run my program here, it's a good idea to save and then run. So I did Command S, Control S if you're on Windows. Now I hit run, it launches it, and there is my program. And it is showing up as a gray window because, well, it's just a tiny little window and there's not much else there. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to set a color. So I'm going to say fill. This is going to be a fill color that I'll use to fill an object that I choose to draw. And we have lots of ways that we can choose colors. And one of those is I can go under Tools and choose Color Selector. Now if you're good at mixing RGB colors inside your head and can work with that, or hexadecimal, you can see I can drag around and go and find different colors. So if I find a color, choose copy, now I go back into my code and I can paste that in. So that is our hexadecimal color, and it's still, we see this little red here telling me it's expecting something. And remember, we put a semicolon at the end of a line of code it's like the period at the end of a sentence. So I've set a fill color. I haven't applied it to anything, but once I set a fill color, every object that I choose to draw after that will be in that color. So I'm just going to say rect, which is short for rectangle. Now if I go here like this, we'll see that it's now telling me what it's expecting, float, 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 float. So it's expecting 4 numbers. And these 4 numbers happen to correspond to x, y, width, and height. So if we know that our sketch is 400 wide, we start counting from the top left corner. So this is 0. This would be 200, that's 400, and this is 0, and this would be 150, and that is 300. So if I were to put in something like 100 for an x, and then I put in a value of 50 for a y, and now if I put in, I'll just do another 50 for my width, and 25 for my height. Now I didn't put any spaces in between there, but if that bothers you and if you want spaces after your commas, because then it just makes it look prettier, go nuts. And now I can run that and we can see it drew a little rectangle, and we went over 100 because 100, 200, 300, that's 400, and we went down 50, but we made it 50 wide and we made it half as tall at 25. Now if I wanted to draw another one and choose, this time I'll choose a different color. So now we'll choose fill here. And I will draw another rectangle, but this time I will put it at 125, so it's a little bit further over, and I will put it at 75 down, and this time I will make it 25 wide and 50 tall. Now if we run our code there, we can see, put it, oh, let's see, oh, I don't want to go 75 down because that was only 25 tall to begin with. Okay, we're going to make this one 50 and 50, so it's a square. So I want some overlap so we can see the overlap happening with it. So with this, you have to do a little bit of mental gymnastics to try and figure out the grid system as you're putting things on screen. So when we're working here inside of programming, we will see that we have options here, and one of the ones that we can choose to help us is I can go and choose reference, and when I choose reference it actually goes back to the web page, and now we can see we have all of the different commands that are available to us. These are all the base ones. There are additional libraries that we can append our project with, especially when we are working with media elements, graphics and sounds and things like that, that give us additional control. But when we look through this, if I go and click on, say, something like shape, I will see that I've been playing with the rectangle, and look, there are a few other options here. So if I were to look at something like ellipse, we'll see ellipse looks the same as that, but it's drawing a circle. Well, it's a circle if the height and width are the same, but if the height and width aren't the same on it, which now I can even scroll down on the side over here until I find, or I could even, I suppose I could have, you can always search for something you're looking for there. But if we compare ellipse to circle, so it's x, y, width, and height are 4 values. which if I look down here in the font full documentation, it tells us the ABCD correspond to the X, Y, width, and height. If we look at a circle just says 3 because it assumes that the height and width are going to be the same. So a circle is a little newer option. For a long time inside of processing, we just had ellipse and rectangle instead of having square and circle. But then they added those probably due to people asking for them. So if I wanted to just go ellipse, and we'll just put this at 200 and 200 and 150, and then I will do a circle. So like this first rectangle, if I changed it to square, I could get rid of one of those 50s because then it would match with that. And now this time I will go at 300 X, 100 Y, and I'll just make it 100. If we run this, we'll see that we drew those. Let's grab another color so I can make my ellipse and circle. So fill, paste a color in, semicolon, and now rerun the sketch. And the second box, I'm going to just put this. And we will put this over. I just want it so it's not touching on the edge. So pretty easy to create basic objects to get things on screen and draw with it. But what we want to do is we want to now extend this and take advantage of the fact that this draw is running 60 times per second, and we want to be able to see something happen with that. So with that, we are going to then build a second program.